Welcome to Love and Trauma, the real deal. I'm Danielle Sebastian, best-selling author, coach, and yes, I've been through the marriage trenches myself. This show is all about how to actually deal with trauma in relationships and make it work without losing your mind. If you're ready for honest talk, no fluff, and tools that cut through the noise, tune in, because let's face it, love can be a bit of a mess, but it's a mess worth figuring out. This is Love and Trauma, the real deal.
All right, friends, let's be honest. Does money ever blow up in your relationship? Like 1 second, you're just talking about bills or groceries, and the next thing you know, it's World War III at the dinner table. Well, here's the thing, you're not crazy, and you're definitely not the only one. Most of the time, those fights aren't even about the money. They're about the patterns we inherited from growing up in chaotic or traumatic homes. And that's why I'm so excited for today's conversation with Dr. Julia Myers. Julia is a nationally recognized keynote speaker. She's the founder of Generational Wisdom and a mom of 5. Her and I have a little bit of experience that we can share because we both have backgrounds in pharmacy. But Julia also has an MBA in healthcare administration. She's become the go-to expert on raising financially mature kids without entitlement. And who doesn't want that, right? She's created the Generational Wisdom Playbook, a framework rooted in clarity, discernment, and common sense that helps families shift their money mindset and pass down wisdom and not chaos. In this episode, Julie and I get real and we talk about why money feels so personal, how trauma shapes the way we fight, spend, and save, and how you can actually start talking about money without it turning into another argument. Plus, we're going to get to how to raise your kids with financial maturity without layering on fear, shame, or guilt. And listen, you're going to want to stick with it to the very end because Julia shares a simple but powerful framework you can start using this week to turn money from a trigger into a tool for connection and legacy. Let's get into the interview. Much for being here today. I'm so excited for this conversation. This is a little bit different than I've ever had on the show. So let's just go ahead and get started. I'm just going to ask you to tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you into what you're doing today.
Oh, well, Danielle, thank you so much. And we have discovered that we are both pharmacists by training and have pivoted due to so many things we didn't see coming. Yes, that's punny because when I was at work, I suffered a retinal detachment and lost my vision in my right eye. And so, how I came to the world of talking to families about money is I was faced with my very own fine print that normally we as pharmacists, we just kind of gloss over, right? Or we think that applies to patients, not to us. But that day I walked in as the provider, I walked out as the patient and with a brand new perception, a brand new vision of what it meant for my family to be prepared or just provided for. And so in that moment, when I'm looking at these fine print forms, I'm like, I don't know that they are ready if anything happens, right? I thought that, everything I had built and my dream had been to bless them. I wasn't sure if it was going to be a blessing or a burden. And so I made that kind of commitment to myself, going under anesthesia for the first time, which ended up being 5 more times. We still couldn't get my vision back. What I did promise myself in that moment was we're going to talk about money in a healthy way because I want them to have the wisdom to be able to manage and be responsible and feel good about everything that I'm blessing them with instead of just being burdened. So that's how
my goodness.
I pivoted from talking about drugs to talking about money, which, no, this is not a Breaking Bad episode.
Indeed, right?
No.
Well, so tell me the barriers that you found being a patient. What did you identify there?
Oh my goodness. So I think, especially in a post-COVID world, we as providers or the healthcare system in general is now faced with so much bureaucracy and so much checking the box of making sure everything is done that in the moment that it really mattered for me to be like, is my family ready? And how clearly can they articulate my wishes if something were to happen? There was just this like lost in translation moment, right? I'm like, you want me to sign this form? But okay. So I think as a patient, some of those barriers were really just, yes, we can fix things with medicine sometimes. Yes, there's a prescription for just about everything, even hiccups, but there's sometimes in life and in our medical journeys or in our life journeys that what do you do when the medicine doesn't work? What do you do when there's no more intervention? So for me as the patient, especially coming from a background in healthcare, it was always more intervention. One drug for this side effect, another drug for that side effect, another surgery to manage this scarring. And at the end of the day, it was there's no further intervention we can do. This is your new normal. And you're going to wake up and you're going to blink and you're going to say, I see the world out of the left eye that is clear and I can see everything that I've gained. Or I can look out of my right eye that's blurry and be mad and frustrated and just disappointed at everything I'd lost. And so at that moment, that barrier, I got to choose then, which eye am I going to look out of, literally and
Mm,
figuratively.
wow. Yeah, that's an amazing analogy. And so what made you focus on the money part of the healing?
For me, it goes back to my childhood. It
Okay.
goes back to the identity that I told myself that money bought happiness. I grew up very middle class in a way that we had everything we needed, but never everything we wanted. And I remember sitting at that round oak kitchen table with my dad, counting coins, which maybe is a precursor to why I like to count pills as a pharmacist. And
Yeah.
and in those experiences, it was like every penny mattered. Every bit of leftovers was saved in a Cool Whip container and put in the refrigerator just to be reused and reheated for 3 times. I still save a single chicken nugget with my 5 kids. And they laugh at me and they just don't get that that's maybe the money pattern that I grew up with was that we can't afford that. Or someday, if you work hard, go to college, work at the same company for 35 years, and then you can retire, then you can be happy. Or then money will provide, dot, dot, dot. So for me, I accelerated that journey and got out of Dodge as fast as I could and said, what's the fastest path to cash? How about we go to a state school for pharmacy? We start earning 6 figures by the time I'm early 20s, and I don't have to mess with that whole medical residency thing. That was literally why I chose one of the pharmacy tracks over being in any other healthcare profession. And so I've always had that kind of need to find value in how much I made, how much I could provide for my family. And the hardest part of that whole thing was that that money identity was then stripped away when I was no longer able to practice safely. You need 3D depth perception, and you don't have that when you only have one seeing eye, right? So I was a bad driver before. Now I really don't drive very often, probably for everyone's safety. And so for me, it was this identity. It was this unwinding of who I had always said I was, along with the profession, along with the literal white coat, right? And in my healing journey, there was no fixing. There wasn't like anything I could do other than just sit there and be patient and just kind of deal with those feelings that came up. And then asking myself, what do I want to focus on? Do I want to focus on the pain or do I want to focus on the opportunity? And for me, it was just a no brainer to say, this is a new chapter, this is a new chance. And what am I going to do with the information that I have?
I love that. So I'm going to kind of switch gears, not a
Yeah.
lot, but so I currently work with partners who are in a relationship with someone who has had some sort of childhood trauma or trauma, throughout work. And nothing sometimes is more triggering than finances.
Oh my goodness. You're so right.
And I have a lot of the people that I work with that just cannot talk about money. without it escalating into, being a way bigger deal. They often cannot find resolution. So I am so curious to hear what you see on your end and what works for people to be able to deal with that being a trigger for them, whatever it is. And then how can they get back on the same page?
Oh my goodness, I am so excited you asked that question because the work starts here with each of us individually. I say we
Okay.
all have childhood stories. We all have stories about money. So we didn't get to choose those stories that were told to us. And I'm going to share with you an exercise or activity to help you kind of reframe that so that going forward, you can choose how you want to move forward. So, how
Okay.
does that sound?
Great.
Okay,
That's
so money
amazing.
stories.
Yeah.
The work that I've done has found there's really four main influences that are driving what you believe about money. So, at
Okay.
the basics, money is a thing. Money is just a currency that it's exchanged for value. It's this thing that always was or that always is. It's relative in every culture, every generation, all across time. Only more recently has money started to become a adjective, a feeling, a stress. So when I'm working with young people, I'll often ask them, "What do you guys think money is?" And they'll say green stuff or cash or plastic. And then I ask to their adults in the back of the room, "What do you think it is?" And they're like, "It's stress, it's debt, it's bills, it's responsibility." And I'm at some point, every young person has pivoted from that 8-year-old version of money is fun and in the piggy bank to money is this emotional thing now that I've got to navigate. So giving ourselves the permission just to say that there is a transition, whether we intentionally did that or not. And there are four influences that really drive what we believe money is. So, number
Okay.
one, generation. Number two, cultural. Number three, social. Number four, your family. So, we're going to dive into each of those really
Let's
quickly.
do.
And I
Okay.
want you to think about those things if you're listening. What's coming up for you as that trigger? Let's start there as you start to unpack your money story. So, if you have to write
Okay.
it down or journal about it or hit pause, we're going to go through these pretty fast. But I bet there will be at least one that you identify of those four is your strongest family influence. And then I'll tell you at the end what the data says is most common.
Ooh, great. Okay.
So generationally,
Yeah.
think about those world events around you that happened that you had no control over when you were born into them or what their effects were. Think Great Depression. Think the silent generation. Think of the lack of trust in the banking system. Now think about baby boomers who learned about pensions and learned about safe wages and learned about retirement. Think about Gen X is the first generation of even females that could own a home, get a mortgage or a bank account, 1972, without their partner or their spouse. So
Oh, yeah.
1972.
Wow.
And then move forward to kind of millennials who have now been sold the dream of go to college, take out student loans, you'll have a job and it'll pay itself off. Okay, well, what do we know about debt right now that Gen Z is completely fearful of? They're terrified of debt
Yes.
and they don't know how to navigate the world without debt. And now Gen
Mhm.
Alpha is like, what's a bank? What's a check register? What is this counting coin sleeve thing you think of? Like, what do I do with coins other than throw them in fountains? Right?
Money just
So
comes on my phone.
yeah, so generationally, think of how
Yeah.
money has influenced everything that you kind of think of, the way that you perceive wealth, the way that you perceive rich, or the way that you perceive careers, two-parent
Mhm.
household, one-parent household. So those world events, like my younger kids don't know life before TSA. The really young ones don't know life before COVID or don't remember life before phone keys, wallet, mask. Like that was the routine, right? So generationally, all of those things influence what we believe and what we think about money. Next, we have cultural. Those are those things that are around us that are slower to change, but are most easily identified kind of as Western culture and maybe Eastern culture. We think of the American dream in the Western culture. I want to have a house, I want to have 2.5 kids and half a dog, or whatever the statistics say. But what we're finding is that some of the newer generations, especially Gen Z, 72% don't ever want to own a home. So slowly but surely, we're seeing some of those cultural icons or markers of success starting to slowly erode. And we're starting to see a little bit more of the Eastern culture influence where multi-generational families are living together. It's not grow up and fly the nest. It's now
Hmm.
maybe you have multi-generations living all under one roof. Whether you like that or not, I don't know. Basement
Yeah.
adults are a big deal. So
Okay.
that's a whole nother thing. But
Yeah.
culturally, there's approaches to debt. There's approaches to leverage. There's approaches to how much do you borrow to then invest? How much do you trust the stock market compared to now more culturally, we're like, we speak in crypto and we speak in currency and all these new foreign fast languages that as a culture, we've not quite all adopted yet. One of my favorite things to do as a speaker is if I ask somebody, if I asked for $5, how would you pay me? I
Huh.
get different ways of payment every time because culturally, some people pull out their checkbooks, some people pull out their credit cards, their wallets, grab some loose cash somewhere, and then the kids just kind of like tap.
Phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just culturally, think of how
Mm.
quickly we've transacted money from a physical thing to now a digital thing. So
Yeah.
culturally, those things that change over time. We're halfway through. Do you have a couple things that have popped up for you already in your money story growing up?
Oh, fascinating. Yeah. I I love the depression. My grandparents, oh, just that money brought a lot of a lot of things up for them. So that just really resonated with me is those cultural differences. But yeah, I hadn't really thought about how these newer generations, how they're being impacted. So I love that part of
Yes.
that. And then the cultural, that's interesting to hear that is changing as well.
Yeah.
So
Kids these
fascinating.
days, let me tell you.
Kids these days, I know it is a changing.
Yes. And the last two sometimes are
Yeah.
the most heavily weighted or are the most, I guess, have the most recency bias
Okay.
because socially, we think of those things that change really quickly. Think of trends, think of fashion, think of how quickly it went from a household that had one TV to a TV in every room,
Yeah.
from a one car family to two cars, a toy, and a boat, and a toy garage. And think of your comparator group. So, socially, when I went to school and I came home, the only things I really saw were the cars that were in the parking lot taking me to school and the houses we passed to and from school and those kids' houses that I knew in the neighborhood. Everybody had that house they went to, right? That was the fancy house or that was the rich kid's house.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But you also knew, and you could probably hear some of those parents arguing, or some of those parents, like you saw them in real life, that maybe you saw the things they had, but the comparator group and the Joneses were literally next door, and that's all you knew. And there was just some container to your comparison. So, social influences, you wanted to be like everybody else, right? You wanted the jackets with the toggles or the Nike shoes that looked like everybody else in your school. Fast forward to today's generation, the world is the container of comparison.
Yeah.
Everything is on Instagram or online. I don't want to say just Instagram, but everything is the highlight reel. And there's a lot of blurred lines between what's real and what's not, and what we choose to put out there and what we don't. The Joneses used to be next door, and now the Joneses are every single person in the digital world. And so when we think about social influences, that ladder of comparison is never going to measure up. And so before, you might feel some pressure of like, oh, they got a new car, they went on a vacation. But you'd feel that pressure, but then you had something to balance it with to be like, and now look who's working, or now look at what's going on. But in the digital world, you don't have that to check in. And so that pressure feels heavy. But when you're saying, this is what I want it to look like, then you're now feeling that purpose when it comes to kind of those social influences of, okay, well, now I can be more generous. And we're seeing a big shift towards generosity. We're seeing a big shift towards social movements and different ways that you can bless people rather than just be a consumer. So I really like some of the generational, cultural, and social shifts, but socially, things go in and out so quickly. The most money with Bitcoin and crypto was actually lost by Gen Z. Think of the day trading stocks. Think of the risk or the hype of like, I want instant gratification and I want to put everything in GameStop, and then it's all gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
So social trends have a huge influence on what we think about money, what we think is rich, what we think is wealthy. I remember my mom, when I bought my first pair of jeans with holes in them, said, "You bought them with holes in them?" I'm like,
Yeah.
yes. You paid extra for that? Probably. So think of those narratives that you have of even just social culture that is always changing.
Yeah.
Finally, we have our family. We have the people around us that as a child, we were growing up, they loved us and they did the best they had with what they were given, right? There was not a parenting playbook because even if there was, it would be very outdated based on the conversation we've already had. So no
Yeah.
more using the excuse you never learned about money growing up. But it is important to remember that our moms and dads worked in different ways and talked about money in different ways. Culturally, that wasn't something you ever talked about. Growing up, I always asked my dad for money. I never asked my mom for money, and so now from a family instinct, what they said about money, what they said we could afford or couldn't afford, what we did as family vacations, what we did as family traditions and holiday time, all of that shaped what I believed money was for
And
and
what they prioritize their
what they
money on.
prioritize. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so for some people that have an immediate family, maybe it now becomes their extended family when they have grandparents involved and aunts and uncles and siblings. Or, for
Yeah.
example, in our family, in a blended family, where you've got different sets of family influences. Now you have ex-in-laws and you have in-laws. Like, think of all of those different thoughts and feelings about money that it just get thrown across the table without any regard for where they land, especially on those young years that still think of money as green stuff, that still think of money in that innocent way of that's how we get things, right? Is from money or maybe from the bank of mom and dad. And then at some point, these kids mature into teenagers and they start earning their own money. And then at some point, they launch and leave the nest. And so that leads us kind of to our exercise. So the
Okay.
exercise that I like to say is called the belief backpack.
Banging your head against the wall trying to navigate the complexities of a relationship impacted by childhood trauma, it doesn't have to be this daunting. When you're married to a partner with unresolved childhood trauma, it can feel like you're walking on eggshells, never quite knowing what will set them off. No matter what you try, it feels like there's always something triggering another emotional response that seems completely out of context. And the harder you try to fix it, the more discouraged you feel. So what's the issue here? Navigating marriage with a trauma survivor is different. The love languages don't work. Date nights don't work. Self-help books don't help. But here's the good news. I've created something that does work. Something built from years of hard-earned lessons and real-life experience. Ready to take the first step toward real change? Let's talk. I'm offering a free one-on-one call where we'll dive into what's going on in your relationship and figure out a way forward together. This isn't just another quick chat. It's a chance to finally be heard, to share what you're going through with someone who truly gets it. No judgment, just real support. So if you're ready to start making sense of it all and find a little more peace in your marriage, book your free call now. Your happiness, your peace, and your relationship are worth it. Let's do it together.
That I like to say is called the belief backpack. So when you're a kid,
Okay.
your
Yeah.
family packed your backpack for you. They literally bought probably that backpack, and you didn't get a say until you had an opinion about which one was cool and which one was no longer cool to take to school.
Yep.
And so your parents are putting in their flavor of generational influences, their flavor of cultural influences. You probably got a credit card or a bank account right where your parents were, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And when you think of social things, you think of like, okay, well, this is what my parents bought as a vehicle or drove as a vehicle, so I'm probably going to do that. Or where you live, is it a house? Is it an apartment? Is it a, any sort of housing situation? And as a kid, your parents pack that backpack for you, and it's heavy. It's lopsided, it's lumpy. Think of these kids going to school right now that just, this backpack's oversized for their emotional container of their body, to an extent that there could be some scarcity there. There could be some fear. There could be some shame around, my backpack's bigger than yours, and that means it's heavier, or my backpack's bigger than yours, which makes me better than you. So think of all the things that kids do as just amplified by money. And as you shift into adulthood and you're sitting on this podcast right now and you're like, okay, I've got all these money triggers, take a deep breath. Figure out, what are those beliefs that serve you? What are those beliefs that say, I really like that tradition of going out on Christmas Eve and leaving a huge tip for the waiter or the waitress. Or I really like the tradition of serving together as a family or making a vacation a priority. Figure out what you like. Let's keep in your backpack those family traditions, right? Those cultural traditions. $2 bills are something that I still use when I travel across the world and tip with, because that's something my dad gave us growing up. They were in the Easter eggs. That was just what we did. It's $2 bills. Now I give out $2 bills and they're like, is this fake money?
Yeah.
Oh, it's real. Like, it's a cool thing. So that's a tradition
Yeah.
I chose to keep in my belief backpack. And then we take a bigger exhale and we say, what doesn't serve us? What are those things that maybe were the mantras or the words that were meant to be helpful, or they just didn't even mean to have meaning at all, but they sat with us? We want to take those out of our backpack. We want to say, I am never going to say I can't afford it again. Not to myself, not to my loved ones, not to anybody around me. I'm going to say, I choose differently. Or I am going to have to save for XYZ months to be able to buy this. Like, there's a literal side of that logical equation, and then there's the emotional. And there's the side of you that says, my money story is full of shame because I had a lot of debt, or I live in debt, or I have overswiped my credit card because of whatever circumstance or situation. We've got to let that go. We've got to start with that clean slate that says debt isn't bad, debt isn't good. Money isn't bad, money isn't good. Your self-worth is not your net worth, and vice versa. Your net worth is not your self-worth. And so when you are building up this belief backpack, often as females will say, you can't earn as much as a man, or you can be the stay-home partner and then you can be the earning partner, or whatever those narratives are. Think of the role modeling that we're having now in our own families for the next generation. Because like it or not, we are by default packing the next generation's belief backpack with all of our own stuff. So all of that work, all of the emotions, it all starts with you to say, what do I want in my backpack? Let's try it on. Let's wear it for a while. I am full of wealth. I'm full of abundance. We're going to get rid of rich is bad, rich is good, kind of the judgment decisions, and understand that everybody has a money story. Everybody has different levels of risk and tolerance based on what they were exposed to.
And I think you were going to tell us which of those four is, what would you say
the
is the
strongest
strongest?
influence.
Yes.
3 out of 4 times, especially with the families that I work with, it is actually the family influence that is your first memory of money. It's usually with your immediate family and your loved ones. Your first traumas or triggers come from your family. And then third, your source of income usually came from your family. So for the most part, your family influences are the strongest, which is both a blessing and a burden for us as parents, because now the roles are reversed and we received all of those influences and now we're passing them on. And we need to be thoughtful and intentional, maybe kind of like emotional wakes. We want to be aware of what our emotional wake is and the story that we have. And there's no shame in it. everyone has this background. It is what it is.
Yeah, and tell me what you see with that, because I would say, the people that the couples that I work with, it just seems to be like the pendulum swung too far either way. Is
Yes.
that what you see, like on that
I
family
do.
influence?
And I
Yeah.
love the Dave Ramsey teachings because
Okay.
it's so simple and we think of baby steps and we think of debt as
Yeah.
bad. And with that, though, comes labels. You're a saver, you're a spender.
Yes.
Instead of saying, my strengths are in finding great deals, or my strengths are in being strategic and budgeting. So it almost feels like a label that you then are self-fulfilling. Well, I'm the spender, so I guess I can't be trusted with a credit card. Instead of saying, okay, those are your strengths or those are your tendencies. How do we meet that need of yours in a way that is healthy and supportive?
Okay.
We find fully restrictive budgets to be very detrimental, but also no budgets to also be just as dangerous.
Right.
Same with risk tolerance. And often, most people are avoiding these conversations because there's this underlying tension of we don't have enough. And that usually comes from one partner or the other. So instead of saying we don't have enough, especially in the entrepreneurial world or in the YouTube world, how many views are enough? How many followers are enough? It's a ever moving target that never ends. Has anybody ever started backwards to say, what do we want it to look like? And then how do we get there? So just a gap analysis, right? Everybody wants to be healthy. Well, what specifically are we willing to do to get healthy? Does that mean we're doing A, B, and C? Or collaboratively, we're deciding, now we're going to do X, Y, Z. And so when we come from a similar approach of a united front, um, united in values of saying, these are what are important to us as a family, and these are the things that we say no to because we think those other things are more important, rather than a you bought this or you saved that kind of an oppositional, is the approach is what really matters. Everyone's united. Nobody wants to run out of money. End of story. Like no one's ever said, I
You
want
have
to
the
run
same
out of money.
goal. Yeah, we all have the same goal.
Yeah. So if we all know that we
Yeah.
don't want to run out and we always
Yeah.
want more, we need to get really clear on what is that? What does that
Yeah.
look like? And
Hmm.
what realistically does our income say that our lifestyle can look like?
I'm curious because you talked about kids a little bit and, you know, taking your money wounds essentially and passing them on to your children. What do you recommend as you start to identify, okay, these are my stories that I have around money, and adjust those so that you don't pass it on to your kids?
Ooh, I've got 3 ways that I like to reframe no.
Yeah.
Even though no is a complete answer, right?
Okay.
No can
Uh-huh.
sometimes feel disarming or can feel like off-putting in the way that a 3-year-old asks for something and you just say no. Is, like there's probably not a lot of conversation there. But as they get older, we want them not just to know the answer, but to be learning the skills of decision making. So always follow your answer of no, no because. No, because we're saving for family vacation. Or yes, because that is aligned with what we really value. Or, you know, no, because is one of my favorite things. Another one that they'll say, but I need it, but I really need it. And then I like to reframe that and say, is that a want or a need? For us as big kids, like, how many times it's so hard to go to
Yeah.
the Target store and not go into that very first spot that says, I'm a deal, buy me, right?
Yeah.
So is that a need or a want? And
Hmm.
sometimes just having that conversation out loud teaches the next generation what are those practical skills that are going to prepare you for when I'm not next to you and that money is coming out of your pocket. And then
Yeah.
finally, well, you can afford it. You have enough money, right? Have we heard that one
Mm.
before, parents? Because I
Oh
have.
yeah. Oh yeah.
And I
All the
like
time.
to go back to either one or two of no, we're not going to buy it because we're prioritizing that. Or everything we have is because of the teamwork that we have built as a family. And we're going to make purchases and spending decisions in alignment with that as a family. And is that in the best interest of everyone? And often Everybody likes to be blessed. Everybody likes to be surprised. And it's okay for us to tell our kids, not right now. Or let's see if the grocery fairy wants to deliver you some more goodies to the new college freshman that just moved in, right? Or finding ways to bless and surprise and delight rather than just always saying yes or always saying no. I love rewarding for value and I love rewarding for results. So, jobs that the kids have or the ways that we earned money growing up are so very different.
Yes.
80% of the jobs that are out there today are all cognitive. They're not physical labor of babysitting,
Yeah.
mowing grass, washing cars. So when we're giving our kids chores and an allowance, it just is basically saying, work on your physical labor skills. Like, that's great, but that's not real world. So I will pay them for reading, for watching YouTube books, or YouTube, like TED Talks, reading
Hmm.
books, calling customer service things. Like, I pay them for skills and for outcomes. And then, as an age appropriate way, when they say, you can afford it, I actually say, I think you can afford that. Or what are you willing to do to work to earn that? And when the bank of mom and dad starts to wean off and their money now has to come to the table or to the register or the virtual checkout machine on Amazon, they start to think differently about it. So, those are three ways that I like to reframe kind of that enabling tendency that we have as parents from the most genuine place in our heart that says, I want my kids to have it better than I did. There's nothing wrong with that, but we have to remind ourselves that we are where we are because of the hard that we went through. So
Hmm.
that is
What if
ways
you're,
that I like to reframe it.
yeah, and what if you're somebody who's like who's a scarcity person, or I'm a spender, right? And
Mhm.
the pendulum is that you may, you know, want to hold on to every single penny. Um, how do you work together as a couple when it's pretty extreme?
I like to figure out safe ways to test your theories.
Oh,
So,
okay.
safe ways to introduce risk. So, say you're from a scarcity perspective, or say you're
Yeah.
from a not enough or an insufficiency kind of
Yes.
a quadrant, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that the act of spending money can be triggering.
Yes.
So, how do we make that the opposite of triggering, but empowering? But
Mm.
sometimes that just means we need to make it less scary. So it might mean that maybe we have $100 bill and we choose to break it into 420s. And we just carry around 420s and we build that trust muscle with ourselves that says, look, it is just a thing. It's not an
Mm.
identity. I also like to talk about when you're from a scarcity mindset, what is that coming from? And what's the motivation of not enough? Is it actual real hunger? Okay, what are we
Yeah.
going to do about that? Is it actual real fatigue? And am I tired? Because the last thing you want to do is be talking with your spouse when you're hungry or you're tired or
Yeah.
you're like stressed and overwhelmed. So, how
Yeah.
do we de risk those situations? Don't talk about money on payday if you know the payday is triggering. Talk about it
Yeah.
before it comes or after it's all gone. Be like, okay, what are
Yeah.
we going to do differently? Find those neutral spaces and also set a timer. Many times I'm on the side that I'm a overly nerd budget numbers person. I could sit and analyze the most beautiful spreadsheet for an hour. But
Yeah.
if my partner's like, tell me what I need to know, set a timer,
Yeah.
win their trust and have a safe 5-minute conversation.
Yeah.
It's going to take time. It's going to take building those habits. But remember, these skills we weren't born with, we had to learn. And that
Yeah.
decision making discernment is going to come with buying something that you wished you didn't and having some purchase regret, but then also not buying something and then being like, I think I missed out too. So
Yeah.
test the opposite emotion that maybe you're so scared of in a safe way. Please don't like bet your life savings in the lottery, all of those sorts of things, but in 5-minute increments, $5 increments, or um, some sort of just collaborative activities that build that trust. Because when you're united in the trust part, the rest starts to kind of, the defenses come down.
Yeah. And I love what you said about kind of plan that, figure out the best time to have the conversation. And a lot of questions that I get is why, in God's name, Danielle, would I bring up something that I know is loaded, emotionally
Mhm.
loaded when things are going well in my relationship? And I'm like, because that's the only time it can go well
I'll
is
add,
when you're not triggered, right? When you're in
yeah,
a good space. It doesn't have to be Sunday night when you're completely exhausted. If that's not working for you, don't do that, right?
yeah. And
Yeah.
I'll add, what's it costing you by not bringing
Yeah.
it up? Like,
Yeah.
if you really think about it, if you really are like honest with yourself of, is this ever going to change? Not if you don't bring it up. And it's the least resistance to bring it up when it's in a safe, calm, good environment than when it is high tense, high stress, high fatigue, low appetite.
Yes. So if you're planning on having that conversation and you can see your partner's tired and hungry, it's okay to change the time.
Yes. And the
Oh,
analogy I use is often it applies with kids, but also adults. We all
yeah.
have so many devices, so many devices,
Definitely.
more devices than we have cords to be able to charge them. But we
Mhm.
also have more cords than we have outlets. So your
Yeah.
money is the same way. It's this finite resource, and it's not good or bad to charge the tablet versus the phone versus the headphones. It's which one takes the priority. And when you've already decided what the priority order is, and it's not just the Maslow's hierarchy of needs of food, shelter, entertainment, but we're assuming that we're all past the food, shelter, like that foundational part.
Yes.
Our needs have been met.
Yes. Most, yeah.
We have access to power and electricity. Now it becomes a decision for us as the adults to say, what do we charge? Literally, figuratively, when it comes to devices. How are we having responsible spending, or how are we having those conversations that say, there's only 3 cords, but there's 6 devices. What do we do? You don't argue over whose device you're going to charge, but yet we often argue over money around which bill we're going to pay or why not.
Yeah.
So if we're able to make it like something that we just do in everyday life, it's like, oh, okay. Money is just like time. It's this resource you spend without anything attached to it.
You've seen a lot of people come with all these money stories and maybe money wounds, and you've seen them rewrite their financial legacies. What's one story that gives you hope about what's possible?
I really liked that there was a mom that talked to me about having these conversations with her kids around the dinner table. And her teenager was quite opinionated, quite, of the mindset that this is not a political comment. This was just the story
Mm-hmm.
was,
Mm-hmm.
rich people are bad. Rich people are just so selfish and they never want to pay taxes. And all they want to do is make everybody else work so they don't have to. And the mom was an
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneur. And instead of leaning away from that conversation or leaning into it with harsh and direct words, she found that having some of these open ended conversations really started to unpack what that belief was around rich and money in her teenager. And she found that when she was asking open ended questions like, well, what does that mean to you? Or what does rich mean? Or what, like, does generous mean? Or your fair share? In not a way to change their opinion, but in a way to like mutually just understand that that was their reality. That's what they saw.
Yeah.
And their influences were really, really coming from the world and everything they were seeing, whether it was social media or whether it was the news. And so a huge success story was the mom was able to really just feel comfortable to say, I'm going to show you what a W 2 is. I'm going to show you what I earn. And when I signed on my salary paycheck, this is a private conversation. It's a safe place to talk about it in our house, kind of put some boundaries up
Mm-hmm.
and say, this is what I pay in taxes. This is the things that I can control as it relates to deductions or whatever. These are the things I can't, like FICA and Social Security tax. And having just a dose of reality, of just factual, instead of all of maybe the input or the influences, these emotionally charged feelings of this is bad and you're greedy and selfish, kind of became oh, well, okay. And it now became a healthy dialogue so that when this teenager went to get their first job, and then the next year, she told me they filed taxes and they were like, I didn't even get a tax return, but I thought everybody got rich on their tax returns. And so it was finding the truth in the mutualness of money's just a thing. And when we start to understand it for what it is, rather than tying all the emotion to it, it can be a really beautiful thing, or it's just a part of life. It's just one of those things that you have to do and you have to adult. What do they say?
Yes.
You have to pay taxes.
Yes.
And so when you're able to meet, especially your kids as they get older, or your partner, like understanding where those deep rooted beliefs come from, open ended questions are your friend. Tell me about a time when, story time, or what do you think about? Are really great ways to open it up. But then what does the data say? Not in a judgment way, but what's your tax
The
return say?
facts.
What's your
The
credit
facts.
card statement say that we paid in late fees and in interest? And there's always, always something to be grateful for. There's always some level of first world problemness that is in all of these conversations. And when we can kind of surround it with humor or, oh man, like that was a very expensive DoorDash or whatever, like giving yourself grace, giving your partner grace. Would we talk to our loved ones in the way that we talk to our friends and vice versa? When it comes to money, often we're the harshest on those ones that we love, especially when it comes to money. So giving grace, I think, is a lesson from that long-winded story.
And getting curious.
And getting curious, absolutely.
Yeah.
And pulling out the facts, not being afraid to talk about things that maybe that was never role modeled for her as an adult, but that was something she said, okay, we're talking about taxes. Let's look at taxes.
Yeah. Real world.
Real world.
I love that. Okay, I have one last question for you.
All right.
If you could leave our audience with one truth about money and legacy, especially for those that came from a chaotic home, what would it be?
I think money is a skill that takes practice.
Mm.
And we aren't born out of the womb running. And we aren't yelling at little babies when they can't crawl right or when they can't run right. And so wherever you are in building your financial muscles, your financial skills, look back at your younger self. Look back at how far you've come. And it's okay to say, I've got a lot more to go, but know that it's a skill. It takes practice. And the skill that we really want to hone in on is discernment. And discernment is what I say my whole message is about is we don't want our kids to have just generational wealth and passing on money. That's like winning the lottery. And we know the data says that that's not great. We want to pass on generational wisdom because wealth without wisdom is really wasted.
I love that. And for those of you out there that have your money stories and you're just suppressing them and you're not even talking about money or addressing it, this is your time. This is your sign that you can do it, right? And
Absolutely.
just to quit suppressing. And I think I heard this quote that I love, like the best antidote for anxiety is action.
Oh, so true. So true.
So true, especially with money, right?
Got the perfect resource to then support that.
Yes.
I have 5 financial conversation starters for the dinner table.
Ooh, okay.
So it's a free set of questions. Please do not try them all at once because all of the people at the table will be like,
to be used in moderation, right?
The goal is to have a starter and then have a deeper conversation around it. I promise no math skills are required. You don't have to know about IRAs or any like numerical acronyms or abbreviations. You do have to just lean in with some curiosity. So if you want to start talking about money, but you don't have to do any numbers, this 5 family conversation starters is absolutely the best place to start. And I challenge you, if you're not ready for it for the whole dinner table, just ask your partner. Just ask a friend.
With your partner.
Ask a parent. Ask anybody because, again, they're not judgment questions. They're curiosity questions. And that's the best place to start money conversations.
I love that. I'm going to do it right now because my kid, I have a, 17-year-old and a 13-year-old. And I want to do it right. I don't want to send them into the world
without being, which could be a whole nother show, right? Is
Oh, yes.
how do we do with our kids? But oh, I love that. Thank you. Okay, that is
You're
a
so welcome.
perfect resource for this.
Yes. Julia
Thank you
Myers,
so much.
myers.com/talk.
Oh, love
Just
it.
talk.
This was a great conversation. Thank you so much, because I just know that people avoid talking about money because it can be very emotion filled, and it's time for us to talk about these things and get curious. Thank you
I
for
love
everything
it.
you do.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. And yes, don't be afraid to talk about money.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, wasn't that such a powerful conversation with Julia? I hope you caught this, because money fights are almost never about the money. They're about the stories and patterns that we inherited. Okay, so let's break it down with the real deal, the 3 things I want you to actually try this week. Number 1, catch the trigger. The next time a money fight sparks, I want you to stop and ask, what's really going on here? Is it fear, control, shame, scarcity? Naming it helps you take the charge out of it. And number 2, talk before it blows up. Don't wait until the bills are due or you're stressed to talk about money. Set aside calm moments, 10 minutes over coffee, in the car, wherever, and check in before it escalates. And finally, teach your kids differently. I don't want you to pass down silence or shame around money. Pass down values instead. So I want you to start simple, talk about generosity, discernment, common sense, and Julia's guide was absolutely amazing. I downloaded it myself, so it's at Julia Myers, myers.com/talk. And it's a really great tool to take the fear out and build maturity instead of entitlement in your kids. Because here's the real deal. Money doesn't have to stay the trigger in your relationship. It can actually become the thing that builds more safety, connection, and legacy for your family. Thanks so much for joining me today, and we will see you next week.
All right, that's a wrap for today on Love and Trauma, the real deal. Big thanks to my guests for sharing their insights. Couldn't have done it without you. Now, for those of you looking to take this journey further, I've got something special. Head to my website to grab Real Tactics, Real Healing, a survivor's playbook for navigating a relationship with a trauma survivor. It's packed with everything you need to know, do, and say to navigate the emotional minefield, find your balance, and regain your self-worth and happiness.